Welcome back to episode 7 of The Great Transition. I'm Annie Browning. I want to start by saying that if you're driving, I encourage you to just listen. If you're not driving, perhaps you're walking around your home or doing dishes or laundry, or perhaps you're outside, I want you to just take a moment to place your hand on your heart and to take a deep breath with me. This is the final episode in our series, and it's an opportunity to integrate all 5 leadership archetypes together and to notice how you are being called forward at this time. And that's why we're pausing and placing a hand over the heart or just a moment to breathe deeply. Because integration requires us to move from just listening in our heads and processing information in the mind to actually feeling it in a whole embodied way. I want to start by listing a few facts, not to create fear mongering, because there's enough of that right now, but instead to note that we are at this moment of precipice, a moment of great transition in our world, and you may start to notice it occurring in your own life. In other words, it's not just an abstraction or something that's out there in the world that doesn't affect you in a very real and profound way. But every major system that is holding our world together is both breaking down and breaking through. And this is not a reason to break down or collapse ourselves. Instead, we go through cycles in which we are honoring the birth and the death and the rebirth that is going to happen in cycles in our own lives and in our systems. And what is breaking down is also breaking through. And in that way, this shift in human awareness that's happening right now, it is opening a window for all of us, a window of conscious choice, likely about 18 to 24 months of conscious choice in which we can say yes to being vehicles of transformation. In other words, we are not experiencing transformation as happening to us, but rather we are embodying that very real yes on the inside that says, let this transformation move through us. And I want to start by saying that the archetypes that we have been dwelling with over these past weeks were not emerging from mental rational analysis. They came from entering expanded states of consciousness using the gaze method. And for me, it was engaging in the gaze method in a group of strong, inspiring leaders who were attuning to the changes that were occurring. And in this gaze experience, I literally saw a wheel with five archetypes that were around them, that were evolutionary necessities calling us forward to midwife and guide humanity through this transition in our species history. So I offer this as an anecdote to say that you too can receive and download information that is giving us the blueprint for what we are being called through together. And this may feel counter to how you usually have led, leaning into the rational, wise, and very important, mind that is going to, of course, guide reason and logic. And yet what many of us are called to is to enter these expanded states, to receive information, to download these blueprints, and then use our rational, wise mind to make sense of them. And that is exactly where these archetypes came from being in a gaze experience with other wise leaders, seeing these archetypes, and then employing the rational, wise mind. And so by the end of our time together today, you will know how to start to download and receive this information for yourself and how to answer this call within you before the window of time, perhaps this 18 to 24 months of time that we are in right now, is evoking and calling you to say yes, to lead in a more conscious way. And this is what we would call a practical mysticism, a practical, real life, embodied, down to earth mysticism that isn't just for the pie in the sky sort of big experiences that might feel like they're very ethereal and shimmery, but this is for the daily emergence that we are living through. So first of all, I'm going to go back to just a little bit of data that supports why this storm is perhaps brewing or coming together in these next 18 to 24 months. And I want to stress that this is not to create fear-mongering, but instead it is a reality check for most of us about where we really are. We know that AI capabilities are doubling about every 6 to 7 months. That is an exponential acceleration beyond anything that we have seen in human history. And so when we look at AI doubling problem-solving abilities every 6 to 7 months, we are not just getting faster computers or faster technology, we're actually creating a new form of intelligence, which is why this level of intuitive intelligence that can receive blueprints and downloads from our collective field is so necessary right now. To that end, the World Economic Forum is projecting that we will have about 83 million jobs eliminated globally by 2027. Now, I want to put a caveat here that there will be many more jobs that will be created, but that is also a depletion that we will feel in a very real way. And all of our industries, whether it's knowledge or creative or therapeutic or even manual labor, is going to be affected by this change. We're watching where quantum computing is transitioning from being something that would have been science fiction to reality. We're looking at financial optimization, drug discovery, cybersecurity. I mean, we're all experiencing a revolution as we speak. We know that in terms of economic debt cycles, that we are in a 75 to 100-year pattern that has only 3 other historical precedents, and that they completely restructure civilization. So we are facing the end of an economic era. And I want to say again, this is not doom and gloom. There is some necessary shifts that want to occur in terms of the cycles that we all live through. We may know, and you probably know this in your own body right now. I encourage you to actually shift from the mind to feeling it in your body, that we are in this very polarized landscape. And it may feel like we're actually living in separate or different realities sometimes. We literally have very little virtual contact or even real human contact sometimes with people that feel or think or live very differently from us. And so Stanford particularly is leading some research right now about this social fracture that is creating that sense of separation that is endemic. So we have tools for conscious transformation. And the question really is whether we're going to live into using them. And expanded states of consciousness that the gaze method uses is a breakthrough opportunity for us. Johns Hopkins and the Imperial College in London all have studies that prove that expanded states of consciousness, whether you're using meditation, breath work, the gaze method, or whether you are considering or have used psychedelics, that all of these mechanisms provide lasting change. They literally change in terms of our neurobiology and increase capacities for well-being, creativity, and social connection. Already about 41% of Americans report that they have had some sort of profound spiritual experience, like an expanded state of consciousness that literally changes how we approach our world. And so while everything is breaking down, consciousness is breaking through. I hear all the time right now from so many individuals who come together for gaze experiences that they feel like something is dying inside of them. And this is not a literal physical death. There is a collective ego death that is occurring right now, and it has to happen for us to break through and to literally change who we are as a species. It is a collective metamorphosis. There is a cellular dissolving that is happening, and our entire being, our entire civilization, our collective system intelligence is reorganizing itself at a cellular substance level. So take a moment with me. If you're driving, just allow your gaze to be a little bit softer. Perhaps relax the muscles in your jaw. If you're listening with me, I invite you to actually close your eyes for a moment. And you may actually drop your gaze downward, literally moving your eyes down toward your cheekbones, softening your jaw, and beginning to feel your body. Can you sense it with me? There is aliveness occurring beneath the chaos. There is intelligence that is orchestrating solutions, even as old systems collapse. Even in this brief moment, can you sense and feel and know that there is a vibration, there is a pulse, there is movement, there is undulation like waves that is happening beneath the surface of our awareness? What you just did right there in a moment is entering a very subtle, expanded state to access collective intelligence that is organizing how we are transforming together. When groups suspend assumptions and listen deeply, they access wisdom that is beyond our individual mind. Neuroscience shows that our most important decisions integrate emotional, somatic, intuitive, and rational intelligence. You will not navigate the terrain of what is happening right now only using your rational intelligence and leaving behind your emotional, somatic, intuitive, and I would add spiritual and consciousness intelligence. You have everything you need. I've been watching where groups who gather for gaze experiences are experiencing something that is a little bit unexpected. Instead of just personal healing, knowing that you're working through your own stuff, whether it be trauma or really challenging circumstances, what's emerging in gaze experiences is a coherent map of collective intelligence. There's visions, downloads, guidance, or knowing that's starting to fit together like puzzle pieces. And this is exactly what happened to develop these 5 archetypes. In that way, these are not roles that we are looking to learn, but they are recognitions of what's already moving through us. And I will be the first to acknowledge that when I saw these 5 archetypes looking like spokes in a wheel, I wanted to simply discount it as something that I was conjuring in my mind. Because who was I to really talk about transformation in this way, or to paint a picture of archetypes that I couldn't corroborate from other sources or resources? And this is what's so important. I want you to hear this from your heart. The intelligence that's emerging right now doesn't care about credentials. It doesn't care about what you know. It cares about your willingness and your yes to receive. So where we're going to go from here in this last episode is talking and reviewing and just going back over these archetypes. But then we're going to pair them on to economic, ecological, systems, social, consciousness, predictions, and patterns, essentially some forecasts that we know are happening right now and that likely are going to unfold over the next 18 to 24 to 2 to 3 years, even beyond, and how these archetypes may start to come forward over these next few years so that you are prepared and ready. to say yes to the calling that's already emerging within you, and to know when some of the archetypes that you may align with, the ideal is we align with all of them, but when are some of these archetypes going to be most needed, most effective? When are they going to be called forward? I want to say very clearly that none of us know the future. However, when we are equipped with an intelligence that is beyond the mind, we get some pretty good hints and signals about what's coming. Yes, there are black swan events that capture us by surprise, but when we are embodying a living intelligence that is beyond just the scope of what our minds can perceive, we get snapshots back and forward in time in the present moment that help us get a pretty good pulse about where we are and the emergence of where we're going. So as you listen, you may have some resistance of saying, I can't become this, or it's too much for me. But I would challenge you with great love to know that your soul knows why you are here right now. And you have said yes to being here for this reason. So let's go back to our first archetype, the bridge maker. It is likely going to become more and more essential. It's already happening right now in late 2025 to mid 2026. So the bridge maker medicine is the person, the archetype, the way of being that is called to translate between polarized worlds and mediate paradox. The activation peak is likely late 2025 through mid 2026. And I want to say again that this is all based on forecasting and prediction models. It is not something to write down on your calendar and say that, yes, this is definitely when something is going to occur, because we are living in a liminal fluid reality and we are creating the pathway as we are living. In general, though, during this time, this is where some artificial general intelligence is approaching a place in which there may be a lack of consensus on how we integrate human AI capacities. In other words, this may create greater isolation and increased tribalism. And so your ability to find truth that holds all sides becomes essential. Underneath every sort of position or stance that we take is a deeper concern. And beneath every concern is a shared human need. And if you are a bridge maker, this is your superpower. You perceive the love that is beneath concern, the fear that may be beneath emotion, and the shared humanity that is underneath division. So in practice, you know how to facilitate conversations between shared concerns to build resilience. You translate, between science and mystics, finding where physics and wisdom point toward the same truths. You may know how to help individuals navigate divides. You may become that person who both sides trust because you hold space for truth. So if you're a bridge maker, you may notice a resonance within you, this noticing that, okay, I'm here and I know why I'm here. So I encourage you to notice that when you encounter polarization, to ask what truth is each perspective carrying, what deeper need is attempting to be met through division. Let's move on to the threshold guide, again, likely peaking or becoming more prominent between October 2025 and early 2027. So that's quite a span of time. If you are a threshold guide, you are called to facilitate initiations, especially through informal rituals, through times of unknowing, or where we are in mass confusion and uncertainty. This peak activation will likely align with unprecedented numbers of people entering a space between who they've been and who they're becoming. So UN data is showing that about 120 million people are currently displaced, and there will be projections of about 1.2 billion by 2015. So we're not just talking about physical displacement, although that's what the UN is tracking. With that comes identity displacement. So we know that there are often three stages in transformation. There's a separation from the old identity, liminal time in a threshold space, and then integration with a new identity. That is exactly what we're going to start to hit, especially October 2025 through 2027. And our society often loses that ability to guide people through liminality. We rush toward closure. We try to medicate or numb uncertainty, and we promise these quick fixes. So as a threshold guide, you restore that essential function, especially through facilitating rituals or moments in time in which you acknowledge these transitions, helping people befriend uncertainty, holding space for collective grief, sitting in confusion without trying to fix it. You encourage people to feel the necessary ego and identity deaths that precede a rebirth. If you are a threshold guide, you probably feel alive in liminal spaces, dawn and dusk, beginning and endings, those places in between worlds. This week, I encourage you to continue to sit with your own uncertainty without rushing to fix it. When someone shares with you about struggle in the unknown, resist offering solutions and be in that space together. Let's move on to the pathway pioneer, likely becoming necessary and needed in January to December of 2026. So the pathway pioneer knows that the old way is dead and something new is being born through them. They scout new landscapes and emergent possibilities. The year of peak activation is likely in 2026, where system thinking research shows we will need what complexity scientists called positive deviance, people willing to experiment with solutions before they're socially acceptable. Research shows that, especially from Clayton Christensen, that breakthrough solutions always emerge from margins, not from mainstream institutions. So while others are still conferring about what the problem is, a pathway pioneer is already building a solution. So we know that in 2026 in particular is where there might be some additional breakdown occurring, and that there will be experiments that are already starting to come forward, whether it be looking at how we live in a post-carbon world, working cooperatives that are an alternative to some of the hierarchies that are endemic right now, whether there is different forms of governance that is enabling democracy, or where there are grassroots communities that are already gaining some traction or power. So pathway pioneers, in practice, you are the ones that are already kind of leaning ahead of the debate, are experimenting with consensus or other forms of decision-making, considering multi-generational options. You're looking at these forms of human AI collaboration that could honor both forms of intelligence. If you're a pathway pioneer, you probably have notebooks full of ideas, some of them good and bad and others in between, that would be deemed unrealistic, but that make perfect sense to you. Consider an area where current systems aren't working for you right now. And this week, take one experiential step toward an alternative. Start small, but start. And then there is the loving disruptor, likely 2026 to 2028, peaking in 2026. The loving disruptor learns to disrupt systems while loving people. You are called to challenge unjust systems through fierce compassion. In this period of time, 2026, peaking around that time, but continuing through 2028, is where there's projected intensifications of climate disasters and wealth inequity that may reach breaking points. I want to pause and say, I want to repeat again, because it's so important, that none of us have a crystal ball. We do not know. We are instead just giving some loose associations based on forecasting and prediction models. But again, we are a living, breathing, intelligent system. We are human beings. And with that, we collectively create our future. In this period of time, though, there may be levels that precede major historical transformations. When we look at times, past and history, it informs that we are likely entering these conditions that would require some systemic disruption. And we know that when we combine disruption with a disruptive discipline, we challenge systems while maintaining love for those who are within them. And you are a loving disruptor if, in practice, you naturally organize action while creating a spirit of cooperation. You may disrupt systems while encouraging renewable alternatives. You may be inspired to resist policies while creating community. And you may make the uncomfortable comfortable with love. You have learned how to channel fire into creative action with a spirit of embodied presence. This week, encourage and invite you to notice just one place that perhaps there is influence or disruption already happening in your community. And one way that you can be a presence of disruption while also offering great love. Because we are invited to disrupt the system while loving those in it. And finally, the hidden architect is one of the archetypes that is most sustained over a period of time. And I want to say that this is from my opinion, at least, that this archetype in particular is probably the most misunderstood, or the one that we may not identify with most readily. And it is the one that we are all going to need to embody. And this is why I mentioned how these archetypes came through, because this is the role of the hidden archetype. You download infrastructure for something that doesn't exist. You will likely feel a bit crazy, but then you will meet others who are getting the same transmission, the same download. As a hidden archetype, and all of us are called to be this, you are invited to build invisible frameworks for collective coherence. You are designing architecture that will replace what is collapsing. And that's why it spans this entire period of transformation. Donella Meadows' research shows that lasting change happens at the level of paradigms and transcendent purposes. In other words, we have to work at the invisible systems level that then generates the surface phenomena. So that you are not reacting to the immediate crises. You are receiving blueprints that are for the next civilization. In practice, you are designing a participatory system, creating curricula, the thing that learns us and grows us through these subtle intelligences. You develop healing modalities that address and span genres. You are engaging in the local economy that's thriving underneath planetary boundaries. This is building the invisible infrastructure of the new world that is going to break through the systems that are collapsing. If you are a hidden archetype, you probably receive ideas, systems, and frameworks through dreams, meditation, sudden downloads, expanded states of consciousness, like the ones that we facilitate in gaze, that seem to come from beyond your individual mind. This week, I encourage you to start documenting the systems, processes, or frameworks you're receiving through those dreams, meditations, sudden insights, or persistent intuitions, even if they don't make sense. And if they don't make sense, then you're downloading something. Trust and honor what's coming through. The blueprints are being transmitted, and they will become implementation later. All right, so that was a lot of information, and you may feel slightly overwhelmed right now. So let's pause and just take a moment to reset. If you are able and it is safe, soften your gaze. You may allow your tongue to fall from the roof of the mouth and soften and be here now. Place that hand over the heart. If you're able, you may close your eyes. Which of these archetypal descriptions made your heart open? Perhaps it raced a bit or it swelled. Which one resonated for you, even to the point of discomfort where you wanted to hide? Which one seemed like home? Your resistance is as important as your resonance. I want to repeat that. Your resistance is as important as your resonance. Often what we need most to embrace is what scares us the most. Take a moment and you are connecting with a future self to look back at this moment where you first heard that call, to step into the emergence, this great transition. And even if all you say in this moment is yes, your willingness is enough. And if it feels right to you, you may wish to breathe a yes. Because here is what is so important. You are not taking something on. You're recognizing what's already occurring in you and through you. Carol Gilligan has some beautiful research that reveals that we all contain multiple ways of knowing and responding. It's already within us. You will be invited to flow between archetypes as situations desire. Bridge makers who also disrupt. Hidden architects who pioneer. This is necessary. There is a critical window that appears to be opening between 2025 and 2027, based on that forecasting across multiple domains. And predictions are uncertain. However, there is an accelerating pace of change that we already felt at the beginning of this conversation, subtly beneath the surface, that suggests there is a window that is opening, and it will close for your yes for participation. You can always say yes. The question is whether now is the time for you to say yes. So here are 3 questions that I leave you with that are embodying your yes. First of all, recognition. Which of these archetypes feel most alive in your body? Can you say yes to this archetypal expression that is alive within you? And the reason we are focusing on archetypes, I want to pause just for a moment and put this in, is because in times of great change, it is not what we know, but what is emerging that guides us from point A to B. It is the archetypal, it is the intuitive, it is the artistic, it is the creative, it is the non-language that helps us get from one place to another. So simply noticing that there is an archetype that feels alive within you, you are already on the boat from one place to the other, from one side of the river, crossing over to the other. The second question, where do you already see these gifts expressing themselves in your life? Where is it already happening? Notice how perhaps you have already been living into one of these archetypes, and simply integrating and acknowledging that yes, it is happening will increase and accelerate its occurrence. Finally, an activation. What would change if you fully trusted this calling? If you said yes right now? Likely you do not know what would change, and your mind will spin the worst case scenario. But when we say yes, it is our most powerful tool to become the vehicle of change from one place to what is coming, because we say yes with willingness to be within the stream of change instead of standing on the banks and looking at it from the outside. I want to say in closing that you are not meant to do this alone, and you are not alone. There is a hidden network of community that is already forming. There are cells that are connecting, and the field itself, this field of intelligence, is supporting our collective emergence. Transformation is here. It's not off in the distance. These archetypes aren't future possibilities, they are present realities. I want to repeat again that the field does not need your competence or your qualification. The question is not whether you are ready, but whether you will say yes to what is already emerging within you. Our collective consciousness serves a collective communal evolution. When you heal yourself and you say yes within to healing what is unknown within you, to leaning into the edges of what you are becoming, this calling is how the cosmos itself will start to organize solution and action through you. The field is ready. Our timing is now. Our question is to answer that yes. So the revolutionary that you are already becoming is exactly what the world needs right now, what your daily life is yearning for. I am holding you and me and we with fierce love and with a yes of the calling that is already occurring within you. We are in this process together. Thank you for joining me. I'm honored to sit with you in this alive and sacred space. I'm grateful for this time together. Signing off and sending you love.